Welcome back to the cryptoworld channel, everyone. My name is Josh, and right now the US dollar is flashing an extremely important signal that could heavily affect the crypto market. And on top of that, Bitcoin is possibly forming a new pattern in the short term that we need to pay attention to. So I'll be talking about all of that and more later in the video. Definitely watch to the end. First of all, starting off on the US dollar currency index, also known as the DXY, and this is on the 3-day time frame. And right now, as of recording this video, the US dollar currency index is currently retesting this previous important support, which is potentially now acting as new resistance. And in case you're new to this channel, this chart right here basically shows how the US dollar itself is performing against a basket of other currencies. And so essentially, if this chart is going to the downside, it means the US dollar is relatively weak. It's not doing too good. While on the flip side, if this chart is going to the upside, that means the US dollar is very strong. There's high demand for US dollars. And so one of the main reasons as to why this chart right here, the US dollar currency index, is really important for the crypto market and also for other markets like the stock market as well, is simply because if an asset like Bitcoin, for example, is valued in US dollars, then if the US dollar is going to the upside, that is usually not so good for the asset valued in US dollars. But on the flip side, if the US dollar is going to the downside, then it usually means assets that are valued in US dollars are going to the upside. Of course, that's not always the case, but in Bitcoin's case, that is almost always the case, where basically when the DXY once again is going to the downside, that is usually bullish for Bitcoin. But when the DXY is going to the upside, that is usually bearish for Bitcoin. And so we can see right here that throughout pretty much all of 2022, the DXY was going to the upside during the exact same time where we had a Bitcoin bear market. And then obviously as we entered into 2023, the DXY has been dropping quite rapidly and has been basically bearish this entire year so far. And so it's no surprise that Bitcoin has been pretty much bullish this entire year so far, trending to the upside from that 15K low. And what's very interesting is if you're taking a look at these previous 2 times throughout this year so far, where the DXY was actually moving back to the upside, at least temporarily, these 2 previous bullish movements this year in the DXY happened during around February this year, and this second one happened during around May this year. And if you're looking at those 2 time periods on the Bitcoin chart, this is on the 4-day Bitcoin chart. As you can see right here, during February, this is the Bitcoin price action that we saw, mostly neutral to bearish price action in the shorter term. And if you're looking at May this year, that was right around here, also during a short-term pullback. And even just over the last 1 week or so, we have been seeing a bit of a short-term pullback over the last 1 week or so during the exact same time where we have seen a small bounce in the DXY, the US dollar currency index. And so obviously, if this is happening time and time again throughout many years of history, this is no coincidence. Those 2 assets do have a negative correlation where, once again, if the US dollar is going to the upside, that is usually not good for Bitcoin. But if the US dollar is going to the downside, that is usually good for Bitcoin's price when you're valuing Bitcoin in US dollars. And so that brings us back to where we are right now on this chart. Once again, the DXY is currently retesting this previous important level of support, which is sitting at around 101.3. And so basically, for as long as the DXY stays below this level, and more importantly, if we actually see a strong rejection from that level, then we would likely continue on with this bearish trend in the DXY on the larger timeframes, which would mean we would continue on with the larger bullish trend here on the 4-day Bitcoin chart. But on the flip side, if we start to see a breakout back above this critical level on the DXY chart, then that could potentially be a strong bearish signal for Bitcoin when you're talking about the larger trend. And so moving forward in the somewhat shorter term here, this will be something to pay attention to. But at least for now, while the DXY is still forming significant lower highs and lower lows here on the 3-day chart, obviously this still means Bitcoin is still looking much more bullish than bearish when you're talking about the larger multi-month long trend. And now, while we're on the 4-day Bitcoin chart, taking a look at at that giant cup and handle pattern, which has technically still completed the formation phase. But once again, as I've said in recent videos here on the channel, we still need to see a confirmed breakout with ideally a weekly candle close well above 31k in order to actually confirm this pattern and activate the bullish price target. So at least for now, this giant cup and handle pattern is not currently confirmed. It is not currently in play, but once again, we're still technically within the larger bullish trend. And now if you're taking a look at the daily Bitcoin charts, once again, Bitcoin is still running into this important resistance. And on top of that, as I've said almost every day over the last 1 week, we do have a small bearish divergence currently playing out on the daily time frame, which basically means we should not really be expecting a lot of bullish momentum, at least in the imminent short term. And instead, like I've been saying for the past 1 week, we should be expecting either some choppy sideways price action or potentially a slight pullback in the short term, which is exactly what we have been seeing as expected. And so at least in the short term, talking about the coming 1 to 2 days at least, I would continue to expect this type of price action moving forward, because also if you're looking at the daily Bitcoin MACD, this is still currently looking more bearish than bullish. But with that being said, it is not showing as much momentum compared to some of these previous movements, which basically means we should not necessarily expect a massive crash in the price of Bitcoin. And instead, we're likely going to see a relatively mild price action, nothing too significant like what we've seen over the last few days. And now if we do ultimately confirm a strong breakout well above 31k, then in that case, one of the next price targets would be sitting at around 37,000, simply based on these important Fibonacci extensions. And on top of that, if this potential bullish flag pattern confirms on the 8-hour chart with a strong breakout well above 31k, then that could also potentially set up a price target at around 37,000 on top of this Fibonacci extension. But it is important to understand that as of right now, that potential price target is not yet active, because once again, we have not yet seen a strong confirmed breakout above this resistance. And in fact, right now at the time of recording this video, the price of Bitcoin is on the very edge of potentially invalidating this potential bullish flag pattern, because basically if we see a strong break to the downside with confirmation, with ideally daily candle closes below this support, then that would essentially invalidate the formation phase for this bullish flag pattern. And in case you're wondering, this line of support I have right here is sitting at around 29.9k to 29.8k. And so once again, we haven't really seen any significant candle closes well below this support, at least not yet. And now if you're zooming into a smaller time frame, taking a look at the 2-hour Bitcoin chart, as we can see right here in the much shorter term, we are technically forming a potential bearish flag pattern, because as of right now, we do have short-term horizontal resistance as seen by 3 separate rejections, and we also have horizontal support on the 2-hour chart as seen by 3 separate bounces. And so essentially, if the price of Bitcoin confirms a strong break below this support on the 8-hour chart, then that would also invalidate this bullish flag pattern and also potentially activate this new bearish flag pattern, which is currently forming on the smaller time frames. And by the way, this level of support I have here on the 2-hour chart is sitting at around 29.7k, and this level of resistance on the 2-hour chart is sitting at around 30.4k. So for the Bitcoin bulls out there, we would need to see a bounce pretty soon in the short term and back above 30.4k in order to potentially invalidate the formation phase for this potential bearish flag pattern. But even in that scenario, we'll still be in this larger choppy sideways price range here on the 8-hour chart. And as for technical price targets, if we see a confirmed break below this support that I just mentioned, then that would set up a technical price target to the downside for this bearish flag pattern, which is sitting at around 28,500. So from the point of the break from that support line to that price target, that's around a 3 to 4% move to the downside, which could be coming next if we first see a confirmed break below this support. So once again, just in the imminent short term, while the price is still holding slightly above this support, we're still looking relatively neutral in the imminent short term, and we're simply just waiting for a new signal to confirm, like for example, a confirmed break below support or above resistance in order to target the next direction. But anyway, now getting into the Ethereum part of this video, this is on the daily ETH to US dollar chart, and right now, as of recording this video, the price of ETH is running into this ascending line of support sitting at approximately 1890. And once again, as I've said in recent videos here on the channel, if we see a confirmed break below that support line with ideally a daily candle close below 1890, then in that case, we would likely see a drop down towards this next significant area of support on the daily time frame, sitting in between 1770 to 1820. And as for resistance, in case we actually see a bounce here, then we still have strong resistance at around $2,000 approximately. And as for the daily Ethereum price oscillators, as of right now, these are still looking very neutral because first of all, the RSI is still essentially chopping around sideways, while the daily Ethereum MACD is also chopping around sideways, looking very flat, showing very low momentum, at least in the imminent short term. So once again, as I've said over the last few days, I would not really be expecting a significant movement in the imminent short term. And now if you're zooming into the 8-hour ETH to US dollar chart, once again, as of right now, the price of ETH is still currently within an ascending parallel channel, which is technically a shorter term bullish trend. But right now, the price is currently on the very edge of a possible break to the downside, which is what I spoke about in my last video. I said we're likely going to see some choppy sideways price action in the short term, and that's potentially how we exit this ascending parallel channel rather than a massive crash straight to the downside. And that looks to potentially be happening based on the price action we've seen over the last one day. And now, if that happens, some other levels of support to watch out for here on the 8-hour chart, looking at the Fibonacci retracement tool from this low from around 1620 up to this swing high. We have the 38.2% Fibonacci level of support at around 1870, and below that we also have this 50% retracement level at around 1820 to 1830, and below that we have the important golden pocket level of support sitting in between around 1760 to 1770. And as for short-term resistance, we still have this level at around 1930, which was also resistance back here. And now, if you want to know how to maximize your profits in crypto, no matter if the price is going to the upside, to the downside, or simply chopping around sideways, which it is right now, then make sure to watch these videos popping up right here on your screen. The video in the top left shows you how to make money if the price is either bullish or bearish using AI, and the video in the bottom left shows you how you can easily profit from a choppy sideways price range. But anyway, that's everything that I have to say for today. I really hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you all in the next video.